The energy backstage was electric. Cameras flashing, music echoing, and tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. But what started as just another night for Jim Jones and Chrissy Lampkin turned into one of the most shocking, emotional meltdowns the industry has seen this year. Witnesses say Chrissy's tears weren't just from stress, they came from deep betrayal, the kind that leaves scars you can't hide from the spotlight. And Jim, he snapped. Moments after Chrissy's emotional breakdown, sources say Jim stormed off. Shouting, pacing, and demanding answers no one was brave enough to give. The backstage crew froze as his voice echoed down the hall, his temper igniting a scene straight out of a reality show gone wrong. What really pushed him over the edge? Was it something someone said or someone who showed up unexpectedly? Insiders claim this was more than just a lover's argument. It was the moment years of unresolved tension. Fame and loyalty finally exploded in public view. Cameras were rolling, phones were out, and now fans are piecing together what really went down in those chaotic minutes before security stepped in. This wasn't just a fight, it was a crash between love and pride. A heartbreak witnessed by the entire industry. Buckle up, because what happened backstage might just change everything between Jim Jones and Chrissy Lampkin. Backstage at the event. The atmosphere was unusually tense. Normally, Jim Jones and Chrissy Lampkin had a rhythm, a silent understanding that kept them balanced even under the relentless pressure of reality TV production. But tonight, something felt off. From the moment they arrived, there was a subtle edge in Chrissy's voice and a hardness in Jim's expression. Everyone who worked with them noticed it. The stylists whispered. The camera crew exchanged nervous glances. And even security seemed on high alert. Chrissy had been quiet for most of the afternoon, sitting alone in the makeup chair, scrolling through her phone. Her normally poised demeanor was replaced by an air of unease. And her eyes darted constantly toward Jim, who was across the hall speaking with his crew. Jim, for his part, tried to appear calm, leaning against the wall, nodding occasionally. But the tightness in his jaw betrayed his frustration. The stress of production deadlines, coupled with personal issues, weighed heavily on both of them. The tension finally erupted when one of Jim's longtime crew members, someone he trusted implicitly, made an offhand comment. Chrissy, already on edge, snapped. "You think that's funny?" she demanded, her voice trembling but sharp. The comment, though minor in context, felt like the final straw. Jim moved toward her, hands raised in a gesture meant to calm, but Chrissy wasn't having it. "Don't step in," she said firmly. "This isn't about you. This is about respect." Her eyes, usually soft and warm, were cold and fierce. Everyone backstage felt a shift in energy. The moment was no longer just tension. It was a full-blown confrontation. The argument escalated quickly. Chrissy's voice rose, her words cutting through the room with a mix of anger and hurt. "You always let them disrespect me. You choose them over me every single time." Jim's response was immediate defensive. "I don't choose them over you. I can't control everyone." His tone was tense, frustration evident as he struggled to explain himself. His crew watched silently, torn between loyalty to him and fear of getting caught in the crossfire. One of Jim's closest allies tried to mediate. "Yo, y'all need to chill. Not here, not now." But Chrissy turned on him, her glare fierce. "Don't tell me to chill. You're part of the problem." The entire crew went silent. The usually unshakable dynamic between Jim and Chrissy had shattered in minutes. Chrissy stormed toward her dressing room, heels clicking aggressively on the floor. Jim followed a few steps behind, muttering under his breath. The cameras caught every second, capturing not just an argument, but a fracture in a relationship that fans had long admired. Inside the dressing room, voices rose even higher. Chrissy accused Jim of putting loyalty to his crew above their relationship. Jim, meanwhile, defended his position, explaining that his crew had been with him since before fame and deserved respect. But the words didn't settle anything. They only highlighted the underlying tension that had been building for months. Crew members said, It was the most intense argument they had ever witnessed between the couple. Production tried to intervene, but there was no stopping the emotions spilling over. Jim and Chrissy weren't just fighting, they were exposing years of frustration, hurt, and unspoken grievances. After several tense minutes, Chrissy's emotions spilled over and she broke down completely. Her sobs echoed through the dressing room, raw and unfiltered. Jim, caught off guard, didn't know whether to comfort her or distance himself. The crew was frozen, unsure how to handle the intensity. For years, they had seen arguments and fights, but nothing like this, nothing so raw, so personal, and so public in its emotional weight. Jim finally stepped closer, his own frustration mingling with concern. "Chrissy, look, I don't want this to get worse," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. But his words only seemed to fuel her anger. "Worse? Worse? Jim, this has been happening for years. You let people disrespect me, talk down to me, and then expect me to smile and move on." Her words were like fire. Jim's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. He had been patient, he had been careful, but this time, the combination of exhaustion and hurt pushed him over the edge. "Enough," he snapped, his voice booming in the confined space. Everyone in the room jumped at the intensity. "I ain't letting anyone talk to me or my family like this." The crew members, some of whom had worked with Jim for over a decade, exchanged worried glances. They had seen him angry, but this level of fury, mixed with emotional rawness from Chrissy, was something entirely new. Production signaled for a cut, but it was impossible to ignore the energy in the room. Chrissy's voice trembled but didn't quiet. "Your family? My family? What about us? What about me? You always protect everyone else, and I'm left to pick up the pieces." Jim's eyes softened slightly, but his hands were still clenched. "I'm not perfect, Chrissy. You know that? I try, but it ain't easy. I can't control everyone around me. But you can control how you respond." She shot back. "You can stand up for me, and you don't. You let it slide, and now it's like I'm invisible." At this point, the room was electric. Crew members quietly pulled their phones out, some recording discreetly. The tension was raw, and the reality of the moment. A private fight caught in a public space added fuel to the fire. Every glance, every gesture, every word was magnified. Jim rubbed his temples, trying to gather himself. "Chrissy, I don't want to fight with you. Not like this." Chrissy's voice broke through, desperate and accusatory. "Then why do we keep ending up here, Jim? Why does it always have to be a fight? I can't keep doing this. I'm exhausted." The emotional intensity was too much for anyone present. Some crew members left quietly, unable to witness more, while others stayed, frozen by the gravity of the scene. The cameras kept rolling, capturing raw emotions that could never be scripted: tears, anger, frustration, and love all colliding in one explosive moment. Eventually, Chrissy turned abruptly and left the dressing room, storming toward the hallway. Jim followed after a few moments, quieter now, but visibly shaken. The two walked past the remaining crew, their energy palpable, leaving an atmosphere of tension that lingered long after they were gone. When production attempted to resume filming later that night, the set was quieter, more cautious. Crew members whispered about what had just happened, some speculating that the argument could change the course of the show. Others were concerned about the impact on future episodes. Jim and Chrissy, meanwhile, avoided each other in the hallways, exchanging only brief glances that spoke volumes about unresolved emotions. By the end of the night, it was clear that this wasn't just another fight. This was a turning point. Years of trust, loyalty, and unspoken grievances had collided in a storm that neither Jim nor Chrissy could ignore. And while cameras captured only fragments, those moments backstage would ripple through their lives, and their relationship long after the lights went down, even as they left separately. The weight of the confrontation hung in the air. Crew members whispered, social media insiders speculated, and production tried to piece together how to handle the aftermath. But one thing was certain: this explosive moment backstage wasn't just a fleeting argument. It was the raw, unfiltered reality of love, fame, and loyalty being tested under the brightest lights. And it would define the next chapter of Jim Jones and Chrissy Lampkin's story. The morning after the explosive Backstage meltdown, the atmosphere on the Love and Hip Hop Atlanta set was tense and uneasy. Everyone had heard whispers about what had gone down, and the crew was on edge. Cameras were rolling, but there was a noticeable stiffness in the air. Jim Jones and Chrissy Lampkin arrived separately, each moving with a controlled energy that barely masked their frustration and emotional exhaustion. Jim walked in first, his expression guarded, sunglasses shielding his eyes who'd pulled low. He kept his head down, walking past the cameras and crew with an almost imperceptible stiffness in his shoulders. His crew followed quietly, each member aware of the lingering tension. Tone, who had tried to mediate the previous night, stayed close to Jim, his expression a mixture of concern and apprehension. Everyone knew the argument from the night before wasn't just another heated moment. It had revealed cracks in the couple's relationship that had long been simmering under the surface. Chrissy arrived later, looking composed on the outside but tense within. Her usually polished demeanor carried a subtle edge, her steps precise as she moved through the hallway. She avoided eye contact with Jim entirely, focusing on her phone as she made her way to her dressing room. Production staff quickly escorted her to prevent any further confrontation before the cameras started rolling. The silence between her and Jim was deafening, filled with unspoken words and unresolved tension by mid-morning. The leaked clip from the previous night had already started circulating online. Fans were dissecting every second, replaying the heated argument between Chrissy and Jim. And the world watched as private emotions spilled out publicly. According to insiders, the footage showed Chrissy accusing Jim of consistently prioritizing his crew over her, while Jim defended himself, claiming he had no control over every action of those around him. The clip, though brief, painted a picture of betrayal, frustration, and raw emotion. Producers called a private meeting with both Jim and Chrissy to address the situation. Cameras were off, but the stakes were high. Everyone involved understood the gravity of the moment. Jim leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, jaw tight. Chrissy sat across from him, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her expression unreadable but tense. The producer started cautiously. "We need to figure out how to move forward. The clip is out there and fans are reacting. You two have a choice: address it on camera or risk it spiraling further." Chrissy's voice was quiet but firm. "It's not about addressing it on camera. This is about respect, loyalty, and boundaries." That argument didn't happen for the cameras. It happened because of years of issues we haven't resolved. Jim finally spoke, his voice low and heavy. "I know. I didn't handle it the right way. But I also didn't expect it to be blown up like this. It wasn't supposed to go public." The tension remained, thick and unyielding. Both knew that what had happened backstage was more than just a fight. It was a revelation of long-standing cracks in their relationship. The crew and production staff listened silently, understanding that this was a pivotal moment. As the day progressed, Jim and Chrissy attempted to navigate the shoots without reigniting tension. Scenes were meticulously planned, conversations monitored, and interactions kept professional. Yet the lingering emotional residue from the previous night made every word, every glance, charged with meaning. Crew members whispered among themselves, speculating on how this argument might affect the couple moving forward. In a private moment between takes, Chrissy confided in one of her closest friends on set, "I can't keep feeling like I'm invisible, like I don't matter in his world. He's loyal to everyone else. But when it comes to me, I'm just expected to take it and move on." Her friend nodded, sympathetic but concerned about the public fallout. "You're right to feel that way," she said. "But you also have to consider how this will play out on camera. Fans will dissect every word." Meanwhile, Jim met with his crew to discuss the leak. The clip had already caused rumors and speculation, and the integrity of the production was at stake. Tone, visibly anxious, spoke first. "Yo, Jim, I swear I didn't leak it. I didn't even touch my phone last night." Jim's eyes narrowed. I don't know who did it, but someone betrayed the trust of everyone in this room, and I'm not letting it slide." The discussion escalated as accusations flew quietly among the crew. Jim remained calm outwardly, but inside, his frustration was boiling. Years of loyalty, trust, and shared history with these individuals had been tested publicly in a way he never expected. The sense of betrayal cut deeper because it came from within his own circle. Meanwhile, Chrissy's team began strategizing how to handle her public response. The goal was to protect her reputation while acknowledging the real emotional strain she had experienced. Friends suggested that she make a statement emphasizing her need for respect and boundaries. But Chrissy was hesitant. She wanted honesty, not spin. "I don't want to dance around the truth," she said. "I want people to understand why I reacted the way I did." By the afternoon, tensions flared again in a less dramatic but equally charged interaction. Jim confronted one of the suspected crew members privately, demanding clarity. "Was this you? Did you leak the clip?" he asked, voice steady but sharp. The crew member denied involvement, but the mistrust lingered, clouding the entire set. Jim knew the identity of the leaker would eventually surface. But the damage had already been done. As the day wore on, the emotional toll became evident. Chrissy withdrew into her dressing room, focusing on rehearsing lines while Jim isolated himself with his team, strategizing about the next steps. The mutual pain was palpable. Love, trust, and loyalty had collided with fame, pressure, and exposure in a way neither could have anticipated. Late in the evening, production arranged for a mediated discussion between Jim and Chrissy to attempt reconciliation and clarify boundaries moving forward. Cameras were off, but everyone involved understood that this conversation would set the tone for the remainder of filming. Jim approached the meeting cautiously, his expression guarded. Chrissy entered, composed but visibly tense. "I don't want to fight like last night," Jim began. "But I also can't pretend it didn't happen." Chrissy's response was measured but firm. "I'm not asking you to pretend. I just want respect. Loyalty to me, like you have for everyone else in your life." Jim sighed. "You're right. I didn't handle it correctly. I got defensive instead of listening." Chrissy softened slightly, but her guard remained. "It's not just about listening, Jim. It's about acknowledging that my feelings matter too. That I'm not invisible when things get heated." The conversation was long and emotionally exhausting, but it marked the first time they had addressed the core issues from the previous night. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a start. Both understood that rebuilding trust with each other and with the people around them would take time and effort. As filming wrapped for the night, the reality of the situation settled in. Social media was already buzzing with reactions to the leaked clip, and fans were dissecting every moment. Jim and Chrissy, while trying to maintain their composure, knew the public scrutiny would only intensify. In private, they reflected on what had happened. "We can't let this define us," Jim said quietly. Chrissy nodded. "We have to be stronger for ourselves and for everyone watching." Despite the chaos, there was a glimmer of hope. This argument, raw and unfiltered as it was, forced them to confront long-standing issues. They had been pushed to the edge, but they had survived the storm together. And while the public would continue to watch, judge, and speculate backstage, the real work had just begun, rebuilding trust, establishing boundaries, and proving that their relationship could withstand not just the cameras, but the chaos of fame, betrayal, and raw emotion by the time the night ended. Both Jim and Chrissy retreated to their respective spaces, physically apart but mentally processing the events. There was an unspoken understanding that this moment would change their dynamic forever. The argument, the leaks, and the emotional breakdown weren't just a temporary setback. They were a turning point. A wake-up call that even in the world of glitz, glamour, and cameras, real emotions have consequences. The morning after the intense confrontations, the Love and Hip Hop Atlanta set felt like a powder keg. Everyone knew the tension between Jim Jones and Chrissy Lampkin. Jim arrived first, his usual swagger replaced by a tense, guarded energy. His hood was pulled low, sunglasses shielding his eyes, and his jaw was tight. betraying the simmering frustration beneath the surface. He moved through the set with a calculated calm, his team close behind him, silent but alert. Tone, one of Jim's closest allies, stayed at his side, aware that any wrong move could reignite the tension. Chrissy appeared shortly after, walking past the cameras with her usual poise, though a subtle edge in her posture betrayed the emotional exhaustion she carried. She avoided Jim entirely, moving directly to her dressing room as production staff hurried to escort her away from potential confrontations. Both of them were aware that the day ahead would be difficult. The emotional fallout from the previous night was still raw, and the lingering mistrust between them was palpable. By mid-morning, discussions about the leaked footage began circulating quietly among production. The 1-minute clip that showed Chrissy's emotional breakdown and Jim's defensive responses had already gone viral. Fans and critics dissected every second, analyzing body language, tone, and unspoken cues. Behind the scenes, producers debated how much of this could be addressed on camera without further escalating tensions. They knew this wasn't just another argument, it was a relationship crisis in full view, and mishandling it could disrupt the show entirely. Jim, growing increasingly frustrated, gathered his crew privately. "We've got to figure out who leaked this," he said, voice low but firm. "This isn't just about the footage, it's about trust. Someone from our circle betrayed all of us." Tone spoke first, nervously. "I swear, Jim, it wasn't me. I didn't even touch my phone that night." Jim's eyes narrowed. "I don't know who did it yet, but this ends today. No more lies, no more hiding. We find the source and we deal with it." The weight of betrayal was evident in every word. For Jim, loyalty had always been the foundation of his world, and the realization that someone close to him had undermined that trust cut deeper than he expected. Meanwhile, Chrissy's camp strategized about how to handle the growing public attention. Friends and team members advised her to make a calm, measured statement, emphasizing her emotional honesty without escalating conflict. But Chrissy insisted, "I don't want to spin this. People need to understand the reality of what happened, the disrespect, the betrayal, and how it made me feel." Her words reflected a determination to stand firm in her truth. Despite the intense scrutiny, later that afternoon, tensions escalated again when Jim confronted a member of his crew privately. "Was this you? Did you leak the footage?" His tone was low but carried unmistakable authority. The crew member denied it, but Jim's skepticism remained. He knew the culprit would eventually reveal themselves. But until then, the sense of mistrust hung heavily over the set, casting a shadow over every interaction. Chrissy, isolated in her dressing room, reflected on the argument and the leak. Her emotions were a mix of hurt, frustration, and exhaustion. "I can't keep being invisible in his world," she confided to a close friend. "I've been patient for years, but it feels like I'm always second to everyone else, to his crew, to his ego, to the cameras." Her friend listened silently, offering quiet support. But acknowledging the public nature of their predicament, production eventually arranged a mediated discussion between Jim and Chrissy to attempt a resolution. Cameras were off, but everyone present understood the stakes. Jim entered cautiously, his energy controlled but tense. Chrissy followed, composed yet alert, wary of another escalation. "I don't want to fight like last night," Jim began, "but I can't ignore what happened either." Chrissy's voice was firm but softer than the previous day. "I don't expect you to ignore it. I just need respect, loyalty to me like you have for everyone else in your life." Jim exhaled deeply. "You're right. I got defensive instead of listening. I see that now." Chrissy softened slightly but maintained her guard. "It's not just about listening. It's about acknowledging my feelings, validating them, and showing that I matter, even when tensions are high." The conversation, though calm, was intense. Both understood that addressing the core issues would require more than words. It demanded action, patience, and consistent effort. This exchange marked the first step toward rebuilding trust, though neither was naive enough to believe the path ahead would be easy. As evening approached, an unexpected twist shook the set further. Tone, still uneasy about the earlier confrontation, approached Jim quietly. "Look, I need to tell you something," he said. "I know who leaked the footage. It wasn't me, not anyone else you thought. It was Darnell. He said he needed the money and thought no one would trace it back to him." Jim's reaction was immediate and explosive. "Darnell? Are you serious?" The betrayal cut deep. Darnell had been part of his inner circle for nearly a decade. Someone who had shared hotel rooms, studio sessions, and personal milestones. To learn he had sold them out for money was a shock. The confrontation with Darnell was swift. Jim demanded answers directly, his voice echoing through the hallway. "You betrayed me and everyone in this room for what?" A few clicks. A little money. Security quickly intervened to prevent escalation, but the emotional impact was undeniable. Jim had always valued loyalty above all else. And this act of betrayal struck at the very core of his world. Chrissy, spearing from a distance, recognized the depth of Jim's frustration. For once, the argument wasn't just about her feelings, but about the foundational trust that had been violated. She understood the stakes. The situation extended beyond personal grievances into the integrity of Jim's entire circle. As the night wound down, both Jim and Chrissy retreated to private spaces, physically apart but mentally processing the events. The couple knew that what had unfolded wasn't simply a fight or a fleeting argument. It was a defining moment, one that revealed weaknesses, exposed vulnerabilities, and tested the strength of their bond. Despite the chaos, subtle sense of resolution began to emerge. Jim acknowledged the necessity of setting boundaries, protecting trust, and prioritizing communication. Chrissy recognized the challenges inherent in navigating a world dominated by fame, scrutiny, and the influence of an extended support network. While they were far from healed, this moment marked a turning point, the first opportunity to rebuild and redefine their relationship, even with cameras off. The weight of the day lingered. The leaked footage, though partially addressed, remained a ticking time bomb, an unaccounted variable that could reignite tensions at any moment. Both Jim and Chrissy understood that fame magnifies mistakes. That trust can be fragile, and that emotional honesty comes with risks. By the end of the night, there was a quiet understanding between them. They were not completely reconciled, but they were aligned in recognizing the challenges ahead. Trust, loyalty, and respect, once tested, would need to be rebuilt through action, not just words. This awareness, painful as it was, offered a sliver of hope for the crew and production team. The events of the day would not soon be forgotten. They had witnessed raw emotions, public exposure, and private betrayals intersecting in ways that redefined their perception of Jim and Chrissy. Social media buzzed with speculation. Fans dissected every exchange, and the industry watched closely. For Jim and Chrissy, however, the focus was on survival.